Hey guys, I'm Upz and you're watching Analogue Culture.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Analogue Culture. And today we've got Upz on the show. You reckon I shouldn't call you by your real name? Because people know you by Upz.
Yeah, Upz.
I don't know why you wouldn't want that. So basically the show is literally to get to know you.
All right.
You know, because you know what Pure Surprise did in South Africa, right?
Yeah.
Even till today.
Yeah.
If you really, really want to just close off the party or get it up in rows, you play Pure Surprise and a bunch of the old classics. It just becomes something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. How's your summer currently in SA?
My summer.
Yeah.
No, it's pretty cool. I just I'm in Cape Town. Recently moved from Sea Point to Bloberg.
Yeah.
And just adapting to the neighborhood and getting back into doing music now slowly.
Yeah.
Got a few things coming up for this year, so looking forward to 2025.
Yeah. I read somewhere that you literally have lived here. You've lived here as in SA, but Joburg. You've lived in Kenya. You've lived in Tel Aviv. Musically, the experience between the three places, how is it for you?
I would say for me, the biggest impact was South Africa music, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rest of the other two countries were less of an impact for me, but South Africa had quite a variety. Like when I was I studied in university at Wits, and I had a band then, and we played a few, like my one band played kind of like indie music, a little bit of blues. It was a three-piece. We all played the instruments, like we swapped around drums, bass, and guitars. And then I had another friend. We had a jazz duo. We played in like cafes and markets, which was quite funny. So, and then I was really following the jazz scene back then. I loved the jazz music. There was a period where I was really into that. And then in the background there was Kwaito and things like that. South African born. Born in Tel Aviv. Moved to South Africa when I was 7. Yeah, and before that I was 2 years in Kenya. So from when I was 5 to 7 I was in Nairobi.
Okay.
And then from age 7 I moved to Joburg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with I want to start with your music influences, and then it will build me to a bunch of other questions. What were your music influences growing up?
I had various music influences. I would say a big variety of music. Some of it came from my parents. Some of it came just from my surroundings. But I was exposed to everything from, let's call it like classic rock to soul, funk, disco, and then I went through quite a heavy jazz phase as well. Okay. There was also R&B sprinkled in there and some, Kwaito and Afro related stuff too. So, big variety.
That is before you joined the band?
Well, as I had a band when I was at Wits University. Okay. Kind of like, say, maybe two separate bands. One, it was like we played indie music, and then we went to kind of funk, blues, indie, and that kind of thing. And I was also starting personally to get into a lot of jazz music then. We used to go out, check out a lot of jazz artists. And I had another little duo with a friend. We played some guitar, jazz vibes, jazz standards and stuff like that.
What year is it?
Long time ago.
What are the artists you're listening to at that stage? On the jazz front?
Oh, on the jazz front, like Pat Metheny. Okay. Also like the classic jazz, Miles Davis, a little bit of John Coltrane. Yeah. And, but also Brad Meldo, he's a pianist, very well known. John Schofield, who's a guitarist. Pat Metheny, obviously, his big track that was sampled and was big in South Africa was Summer Days, Okay. And he wrote the original Slip Away. If you listen to Slip Away, you'll see that it's Summer Days, really. Yeah. And Pat Metheny was like, and he's an amazing musician.
Yeah.
So I was very inspired by that kind of vibe at some stage. So I went through different phases of inspiration, let's call it. I mean, there was one phase I was also into, like Earth, Wind and Fire, Stevie Wonder and a little bit those kind of things, like the soul stuff. And then R&B, and then started getting into house as well. With I was exposed to house with some compilations that came out of the UK actually, when Defected first started out. Defected first started out, I think, in the end of like 1999 or something, and then and a few years later I started listening to some of their compilations, which I really dug. And there was also a compilation called Lazy Boy, also from the UK. By one half of it was by Everything But the Girls male DJ, I forgot his name. So that kind of got me into house, and then I was exposed to Masters of Work, and all that kind of stuff, which was quite interesting because it was very musical. If you remember, they were working with another huge influence of mine, going back to the thing which I forgot to mention, and that's George Benson. George Benson, like, I really loved his guitar work. Obviously, later on went to be also a pretty good vocalist as well, doing all that R&B. So the R&B thing was very important for me. It was like even the current R&B of the day, I was like kind of listening to it. I was enjoying it. And a track like Pure Surprise was very much R&B. It was written as an R&B song and had a version, and it was very much influenced by that kind of vibe.
So literally when you started, this is post the bands and pre-music production.
Let's say as I was getting into music production, this was the same time that I was talking about getting into the Defected compilations, and also another influence was like the Daft Punk and that kind of vibe. Because I loved how they took electronic music and made it commercial. So that was a big influence as well. Daft Punk, I would say. And as I was getting into when I was getting into music production, I was trying to find like, okay, what am I gonna do? Like, because I enjoy writing music. I'm also a songwriter. So I was figuring out, which direction am I gonna go? So I tried different directions, I tried, my first song, which I actually produced, was a bit of a trip hop song. With a bit of jazzy vocals and then like, kind of like a broken beat vibe. But I was also experimenting with some, let's call it dance house music. And I was experimenting with, those kind of like electronic music genres. But eventually I started locking down with time into house. I started getting exposed more and more to house music. I love that the soulful side of house music with, the kind of like, they were sampling a lot of 70s stuff and all that, and like Frankie Feliciano and those guys. So I was like enjoying the stuff that they were putting out, and also Masters of Work being also very musical. And as I said, George Benson, their collaborations with him, and so that was just So I started honing into house music, and then I started ditching some of the other genres. But I was always into producing, and still till today, produce other genres as well. So I'm not just a house music producer. I'm actually, first of all, like a composer, let's call it, composer and songwriter. Because I also write lyrics and stuff like that. So I see myself first as a composer and secondly as a producer.
So, will you literally say that are you trained in music?
No, it was all self-taught from since I was a teenager, or even slightly before. I used to have some keyboards at home, and then I saw that I have a musical ear, which came from my dad's side. He was a little bit of a musician himself, like a part-time musician, played accordion, it's quite a nice singing voice. Myself, I don't have a good singing voice at all, which is why I use AI if I do any singing. But that's a story for another time. But I got my musical ear from his side. He also used to collect some like vinyls of different bands and stuff like that, So there was always music like in the house, mostly from his side.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed music from a young age. And then I started playing some keyboards. And then later on, I picked up the guitar, started playing guitar. And then that's when I joined some bands at university and we played a little bit here or there.
Oh, this is dope. So literally, musically, you were never formally educated in music. It's self-taught in whatever you learned from everything else that was around.
Yeah, I was self-taught. I did try keyboard lessons. Maybe I had 1 or 2 lessons, but then I ditched that and I just thought, let me just play by ear.
Right, yeah.
And same thing when I went into production, because the production side I only did after the band started, started getting into production. A friend introduced me to some software and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool, As a matter of fact, after I was introduced to the software, I realized I don't want to be in bands anymore. I want to just sit and produce. Because being in bands was like a frustrating experience for me. It's like sometimes you just sit and you jam, and to get a finished product was like difficult,
Yeah.
And you had to deal with other people and their egos or whatever and their timelines. And when I started producing, I realized, oh, I can do everything from start to finish and have a product at the end, a song, finished song. I'll do the beats, the drums. Okay, yes, I can collaborate and get some help, sure, and vocalists and all that. But at least I'm, in charge of the process that can get a finished product done, which for me was exciting. So that was a big shift getting into production.
Do you remember your first song that said, literally your first song that actually went on to sit on a record label that sucked?
The first song of mine that actually, I would say one of the first songs that sold on a record label was a song called Moment With You. And it was a house song, very much influenced by that Masters and Work soulful sound.
Yeah.
And it was on a label, quite a big UK label at the time called CR2. They were putting a compilation called United Nations of House. Right? So they took people from different countries and, so I was on, one of it came out on vinyl as well, because previously you asked me about vinyls and my releases. So, well, before we started the recording, obviously. But that was actually my first track on vinyl, and it had like Tom Novi and other names on it. And there was a Upz track, my debut, my first track on a label. Yeah, and it was quite nice to have like your first track on vinyl, and also came out on CD and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool.
Were you Upz by then?
I was Upz. That was the beginning of Upz, and so right at the beginning of Upz, track was called Moment With You. Actually, Kiko Navarro also did a remix of it, and a cool kind of funky mix, and cute track. I would have done things a bit differently, but it's got a nice soulful vibe, and it was a nice way to start, I think.
Yeah, true, it is.
Yeah.
Especially if it goes on vinyl, it's coming.
Yeah, so that was my first house kind of Upz release.
Yeah. Have you met Kiko Navarro?
I haven't met him, but you know how it's like in the thing, like sometimes you communicate or whatever, through social media or whatever, or through the label itself. Often it's a label. Back then, I didn't have So What Records when that came out. Okay. So it came out on a label, and I think it was called Bubble Soul, and that was the label that was commissioned Kiko to do the remix.
Do you remember the year?
Around 2007.
2007.
Yeah, well, it came out on vinyl 2006, and then around 2006, 2007.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was an era in South Africa where YFM came in, 97, 98. YFM came in for all the house you could literally want to listen to, and they kind of kickstart the house community in South Africa of listening to music.
Yeah.
Right. Then were you still in bands, or were you already making music?
Then I was kind of like, I was in bands, and I was like finding myself.
Yeah.
I was finding myself because I wasn't happy being in a band. And then the production process took a few years to get off the ground. Because, you can start producing, but, in today's age, a lot of guys like it very quickly. But back then, it was like, there was a lot of unknowns, a lot of new things. We didn't have as much exposure to tutorials and all that kind of stuff that you have today,
Yeah.
So we had to learn a lot, like by trial and error and, tutorial. I mean, even YouTube wasn't really active back then. It only started a couple of years later. So we had to kind of get some mates or get some lessons or, and figure out a lot of things by ourselves. So yeah, I was finding myself, and then around 2006, 7, things started falling into place in terms of like UPZ and the house thing, and that's when I started releasing.
Yeah, dope. You never considered going radio? I mean, literally, a lot of people in Joburg that were DJing, majority of them went on to radio. They went on to work for YFM, Metro FM, and literally play house music there because that was one of the biggest platforms.
Well, at that specific time, I was not in South Africa. I was in Tel Aviv, yeah. Because I was at Wits Uni, and then I went to Tel Aviv because my parents lived there.
Okay.
And then, so at that specific time, I wasn't in South Africa, but I ended up, a couple of years later coming to South Africa. Started off being with like a few tours with Black Hole, actually. And then I started realizing, I kind of miss South Africa and I'm enjoying the vibe here. So I eventually came back and,
Did you say you toured with Black Hole?
Yeah.
They released 1,000 Seconds around that.
2007.
Yeah. Was the most biggest track there.
Yeah.
They just re-released now again?
Yes, they did. And I actually did a couple of TikToks on it, which went to quite famous. Not famous, but they got a lot of attention. For some reason, I've become Black Hole's unofficial spokesman. No, because I know Mr. C as well, quite well. And we worked on a track together a few years after that.
Is it?
Yeah.
How was your experience with touring with them?
It was interesting.
Sorry, just to...
I don't know how much I can say on air, but...
I mean...
You know those days.
Spill the beans. Spill the beans.
Yeah. No, it was cool. It was... this was actually the first tour with Black Hole was the year that Pure Surprise came out on Lula Cafe's compilation on Soul Candi, right?
Yeah.
So actually we did a little tour, and with Lula Cafe was on board, Black Hole, a few others from the Black Hole fam. And we did a nice little radio tour, YFM, DJ Spoo, when he was still on YFM.
Yeah.
East Coast Radio, we came together. So we did a little tour of Joburg, Durban. And it was nice. Those days house music was doing really well.
How, compared to today, how was the touring scene back then?
I don't think it was as organized as it is. I think today is you've got the agencies and you've got the party lines, and back then, it was there was a lot of excitement also in there, and there was a lot of these little kind of venues which were almost like little houses, not houses. If you remember, Afro Fashion Lounge in Durban. Do you know that place?
I heard about
it. It was a big one. I think it was Tira's place.
Yes.
So there was a few of those. There was in Durban, there was in Pretoria. I forgot the one in Pretoria's name. Very nice. I think it was in Mamelodi, but I forgot the name. And we had these little gigs in those kind of places. So it's not just clubs and stuff. So it was a very, there was a little bit of excitement in the air, and it was less about taking phones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And just enjoying the music, getting into the groove. And
wasn't it Jeff Buddha?
yes.
Yeah.
That was a cool venue.
Yeah.
So I think back then there were advantages and disadvantages, and today the South African music scene is a lot more developed. I mean, back then, 2009, when you looked around at house music in South Africa, it was still dominated by overseas artists, right? So, Black Coffee was slowly coming up, and even Black Motion went around and stuff like that. But so all the music, I would say 95% of music coming out on Soul Candi compilations were overseas artists.
Yeah.
But because house music was so big in South Africa, a lot of people in South Africa thought those artists were actually South African, because they came out on compilations by Fresh, Euphonic, Lula Cafe, DJ Terrence, So people thought, those are the artists. But it was mostly based. But I think South Africa very quickly caught up. By the time 2011, 2012 came along, suddenly there was a little bit of a shift. The number of overseas producers started going down on those compilations, and the number of South African producers started going up.
Yeah.
You know, you had Black Motion entering the scene. You had Liquid Deep. You had, you know, RJ Benjamin and those guys.
Yeah.
And then, and Black Coffee was doing really well already by then, you know.
Yeah.
And even already in 2010, Black Coffee did a remix for me for one of my tracks, Love Is Not For Hire. And even then he was like starting to, you know, make some splashes overseas. So by the time 2011, 2012 came along, South Africans started making waves, you know, and started to get noticed slowly.
Yeah.
You know? And then a few years later, it was like, they started like dominating almost, especially in the local scene. Local scene was like, started being like 80 to 90% South African.
Yeah. I think it's the era of the CD thing.
Yeah, it's the era when the CD was kind of like starting to actually go down a little bit.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, because the CD era still represented mostly the overseas producers.
Yeah.
But then as the CD era progressed, more and more like Soul Candi and House Africa and them started introducing more and more South African artists. So yeah, but by the time South African artists were like being introduced and being grounded into the scene, then the CD era started going down and then the digital era started going up.
Yeah, true. I do believe that, don't get me wrong, innovation is a great thing. But I think there's certain areas where they shouldn't innovate so much. I believe artists made more money selling music on vinyl.
Yeah.
I think artists made more money selling music on cassette tapes and CDs. When they moved into the digital era, I think less artists are literally making money off of the music, particularly the ones that came in late into the industry and were building their names, right? Literally, your music needs to be TikTok viral for you to get streams.
Yeah.
And once you get streams, that's it.
Yeah.
There's no physical copies being bought. It's not, your music is not tangible.
Yeah.
So 6 months down the line, if there's 200 of you doing the same strategy in marketing, you get lost.
Yeah.
Right? And I think innovation should stop somewhere along those lines.
Yeah.
Or either artists need to go back into releasing physical copies.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think also innovation, there's a lot of pluses to innovation. My attitude with innovation is like, make the most of it, you know?
Yeah.
And actually back then when I started So What Records, which is my record label, when I started So What Records, I was in a little bit of a dilemma because when I started So What Records, vinyl was still a thing with house music. But I was seeing that the digital is going up and up. You know, Beatport, TrackSource, and iTunes was just kind of like almost starting, and Spotify wasn't even around. But I was thinking, no, the future is this.
Yeah.
This is a future. So when I started So What Records, I actually didn't put it at all on vinyl. I said, no, I'm doing a digital only label. And back then it was a bit rare, you know?
Yeah.
But then it was like, after like, I don't know, a year or so, all labels started just being digital.
Yeah.
A year or two, yeah. So, but things are coming a little bit in full circle because now, looking back, and because vinyl is doing a little bit of a comeback, actually, I'm going to start probably this year releasing vinyl again.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start it with some of the back catalog tracks on from the UPZ catalog, you know, possibly Pure Surprise, Believing, Uzongelinda, Africa Woman with Black Motion. Some of those ones, I'm going to take them and actually release them on vinyl because, as you were saying, the thing with a tangible version of music is it gives it more longevity and there's more of an emotional attachment between the purchaser and the artist. So this is definitely something I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it this year, and I'm looking forward to doing it to kind of like solidify the back catalog a little bit more.
Yeah. How does it feel being an artist and a record label owner to you? Does it bring more pressure, less pressure? Because I do believe that you not only reach UPZ music, but you do other artists as well.
Yeah, on So What Records, I try keep it to either UPZ or UPZ related collaborations. But you're right, from time to time I release singles by other artists. You know, I released something with Gino Strike, I released the DJ Qness track, Uzongelinda. But I try to kind of maybe give it a touch, like maybe do a UPZ remix or something.
Yeah.
So yes, it is a little bit tricky because you then have two hats. You have to have the record label hat and you have to have the producer artist hat. So sometimes you need to be like the businessman and act like that, and sometimes you need to be the artist. So it can be a little bit of a difficult thing, to kind of navigate, but you learn how to do it. But in my case, I decided that I don't want to be like a full-on record label that signs artists left, right, and center, whatever, because then I'd get lost as an artist. So I keep the record label more as a side thing, as a vehicle for my productions, and then I'm mostly focused on composing and producing.
Yeah. What do you want to do with the label? Are you ever going to stop making music?
I don't think so, no. I'm not going to stop making music.
Who's inheriting your record label?
Well, we yet to see. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I'm just thinking of, just making music. But
if at any stage somebody came to you and offered you, I think it was Justin Bieber who was offered 200 million for, was it 200 million?
Yeah, a lot of artists, a lot of these artists are offered a lot for their catalogs or whatever. Look, we underground artists, so we don't have, our catalogs aren't as obviously much smaller, significantly. And no, but I'm happy running the label, and it's doing, like, it's picking up. It's picking up along, on digital stores. People are loving the back catalog actually as well. And now that I've started making music as UPZ again, people are also enjoying the new tracks. There's a new, generation of artists that's listening to the old tracks and the new tracks. So I'm happy with the direction. I'd like to increase the output though, of myself as an artist, and just in general, because as a producer, I'm not the fastest producer. I'm not one of those producers that will have a track every 2 weeks or 4 weeks even, I might release maybe once every 2 months or so, and often I also go back to my back catalog and try do some remakes and like if a track I released was a deep house track, I might do it as Afro house. So I try to play around also with my back catalog, because I think it adds also longevity to the track, and especially if the song is good. Sometimes the initial packaging of the song might not have been great, Sometimes the initial production could have been better. So you can always try it out with a new kind of like production. And in today's digital age, actually, that makes it easier in a way. So, maybe back then when you just had vinyl, you were like stuck on vinyl, we spent a lot of, but now with the digital age, you can try it out. And if it doesn't work too well, you can rework it and re-release it 3 months later as a new rework, and maybe that rework will get the attention that the original didn't. You know what I'm saying? So this is where, like, there's advantages in the new technologies, and you just have to adapt. You have to adapt or die, So I'm trying to adapt, and that includes AI too.
And it's actually doing a whole lot of great things, but it scares me a bit. That's a topic for another day, but it does scare me a bit.
No, we can touch on it later if we have some time, sure.
Of course. Going back to, you were speaking about maybe you could release a track every 2 months. I don't know if you've noticed that there's a lot of artists that literally release every month. And the music tends to become monotonous. Have you noticed that?
Yes, I've noticed. Yeah, I have noticed in general, like there's a lot of like styles which kind of like repeat themselves, or templates almost, or things like that. Yes.
Well, how do you advise against that?
Well, me personally, what I do, because I'm quite musical, I don't fall so much into that thing, because I always add like a musical element, chords, composition. I do a lot of key changes and things like that. So sometimes I always add my touch to something. So even if I collaborate with someone who's doing like a deep house or Afro house or whatever, I always bring my thing, which I try to make it a bit different. And I use composition a lot of times. The production might sound similar to other producers in a way, but there will always be something which will make it kind of UPZ sounding, which is maybe a lot of it has to do with the composition aspect, the chords. I like to use a lot of chords in songs often. Like, for example, I like the old-fashioned song structure where you've got a verse, a verse, chorus, and a bridge, and then a final chorus, for example. So in each section, you might have different chords. Like the verses might have a different chords to the chorus, and then bridge will have a different chords. So I use a lot of musicality, not all the time, but some of the time. And I think that's where my signature comes in, and that's why I can do slightly different genres, whether it's Afro house, deep house, soulful house, but it will still have that Upz thing, you know? And yeah. And another thing that I do, which also makes it not so much of a template, most of my music is vocal based, song based. So, and often I'll work with different vocalists, you know, whether South African, overseas vocalists, and male, female vocalists. So that adds variation to a track. So therefore my tracks don't usually all tend to sound the same, you know, but there is something which is similar there, you know, the musicality or whatever, but there's always, you know, something which makes it a little bit different, maybe, I think, from some of the surrounding tracks. Also, I use a lot of key changes as well, which is not done a lot in house music. But I use it. I do it quite a lot. Like I can, like 5 or 6 tracks at least.
The vocalists and artists. Okay, let me start here. Do you make the song, send it off to a vocalist to listen, and then they send it back with their thoughts, or how do you work with vocalists?
Well, I work in multiple ways with vocalists. In some cases, I might have the song and everything ready in advance. Like sometimes I have a song, like for example, Pure Surprise, I wrote the song, the lyrics, everything before. The vocalist came in, he added a few things which gave him his touch, you know? But it was all based on my top line and my lyrics, right? But in other cases, I might, like if the vocalist is also a good songwriter, because sometimes the vocalist might not be the best songwriter, you know? Sometimes there's a good songwriter who's not the best vocalist. I mean, I write songs, but I'm a terrible vocalist. That's why I need it. Unless I start using AI. So basically it depends. Like if you take a track like Believing with Kafele, I just did the backdrop, the music. I sent it to him and he did such a great job. I thought, okay, cool. There's nothing really that I can add. But in some cases, I'll have maybe an idea or I might not. I'll send it to the vocalist. They'll send it back. And then I'll work with their ideas and I'll add some of my own. So it's more of a collaborative effort. So like a track that I did with Noella called What's the Point? That was on Strictly Rhythm. That's what we did. Like we sent, myself and Danny J, we sent it to her first. She wrote some ideas, sent it back. We took our ideas, cut it off, added some of our ideas, sent it back. So there's quite a bit of back and forth between myself and the vocalists. Because I'm kind of like picky about what I want. Sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. So it all depends on the circumstance.
Have you ever gotten into a disagreement to a point you say, let's leave the song?
It can sometimes happen. But it's not, I would say most of the times it went through. It went through. There was like the interaction. We managed to, work something out. But sometimes, sometimes projects don't come through. I mean, obviously it can happen. So that, project doesn't come through for whatever reason. Could be artistic reasons, could be business reasons or whatever. And it's fine. You just accept it and move on to the next one.
What's your process of finding vocalists? Like, how do you decide I'm gonna work with DPK, I'm gonna work with CEO? Like, how do you decide that, and how do you find?
A lot of times you speak with industry friends, like with CEO, for example. You did a track with her, great track, A Dream Away. I love the lyrics on that track that she wrote. So I met up with Cuba, who I was, friends with. We did a few things already before, like he remixed Happy Days, Cuba remix with Stephanie Cook. So I was speaking to him and said, hey, I started working with a really cool vocalist. Her name's CEO. Yeah, you should check her out. And I said, oh, cool. Send me something. Yeah, he sent it to me. Oh, yeah, she's really good. Yeah. So we talk amongst, friends and industry friends. And then that's kind of like, so often you will find a situation where we all kind of, not all, but a lot of us are working with similar vocalists, Ralph Gum and myself working with Kafele.
Yeah.
A few of us working with CO, Julia and myself working with CO.
Yeah.
Who else? Kali Mija. A few of us, Atmos Black works with Kali Mija. Myself and Salvador works with Kali Mija. Sophia Nzao. Sophia Nzao is from Kenya.
Yeah.
So it does happen where like we all kind of liking similar vocals, but sometimes I source vocalists from like I might either like maybe from social media,
Okay.
I might come across someone who I think is cool, or I can sometimes go onto various websites where their vocalists offer their services.
Yeah.
So this is how I met a few. Like for example, there's a website called Sound Better.
Okay.
Right, and there you have musicians and vocalists, and then you can find like really, really cool vocalists as well.
Yeah.
So that's another option for me. And an additional option was actually me going to different venues. Like there was one period where I went to London. I stayed in London for a while.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to go was I wanted to go to open mic events and just to come across different vocalists. And it was a very interesting experience. I actually ended up meeting a vocalist and we ended up writing a song together, which wasn't really officially a UPZ song. It was under another project of mine called Dull Hates Disco.
Okay.
And actually that song did really well in South Africa. It was released around 2016, 17. It did really well in the more like dance pop supporting radio stations like 5FM, 947, Jacaranda, Good Hope, Heart FM. Top 10 on a lot of those radio stations. I did end up doing a UPZ mix. I did it one with Abby Casol and one just UPZ.
Yeah.
So we did like a more Afro version of it, a track called Endless Motion by Dull Hates Disco. So yeah, so that's the different ways of approaching vocalists. So it could be an interactive thing where you see them in shows or whatever, or it could be asking around industry people, and yeah, social media and those kind of things too.
Yeah, and ending up with the cool vocalist. Yeah. How many aliases do you have? Like, how many aliases do you have that literally release music under?
Yeah, I think I've had too many.
Too many.
Yeah, I think I've done some branding mistakes,
Yeah.
And I still today, I'm not so happy with my branding related decisions.
Okay.
But it is what it is, and there's nothing I can do now. But I've released under my own personal name, which is Avi Elman, released in the past. But the main one was UPZ. But yeah, it was Avi Elman. Then I had a project called Dull Hates Disco. It was more non-house stuff. So I did some indie stuff, some electronic music, some even touch of Afro house, some dance pop. Dull Hates Disco, right?
Yeah.
And then I've got a new project. It's called Finite, Finite. And there I do more like, I call it Afro fusion. So it's kind of like amapiano, but not really. It's more like amapiano mixed with Afro beats, mixed with dancehall.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of vibe. A little bit of Afro house. So that's Finite. So yeah, maybe 4 or 5 aliases. But my main one, my main one is UPZ.
UPZ literally does soulful house.
Yeah, well, it started off soulful house, but even back then I did a touch of Latin house too. Anything house. It can be soulful house, Afro house. I mean, I did the track with Black Motion, Africa Woman. I did an Afro house track recently with Sophia Nzao called Na Wose. And I did a version with PM Project and another version, Afrotech version. And I do deep house as well. Like, for example, that track I collaborated with Salvador, the new school deep house.
Yeah.
The one I did with Salvador, called Some Lovin' featuring Kali Mija. We also did a version called of Walking on Water, which is another track with Sophia Nzao from Kenya. So I did the SOS mix with the Salvador. That's again, that new school deep house. So it's all, anything house, I would say, is UPZ,
Yeah. What's your take on new school house? They call it new age.
I like it.
You like
For me, I like most genres that come from house music, if they're musical and if they're not too like raw. Like for example, amapiano I also like a lot. But which side of amapiano do I like? I like the private school amapiano.
Yeah.
Like Calvin Momo, those guys. For me, it's very similar. It's almost like house music.
Yeah.
There isn't really a difference. But the more hard school, like amapiano, like the one with the heavy, like vocals or lyrics, the clubby one, I can appreciate it, but it's less my personal taste.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if a music genre comes up and it's got a good sound, it's doing nicely, I can adapt to that.
Yeah.
Usually, what I might do is maybe I might collaborate with someone who's already technically doing that well, and then I can bring in my side, which is composition, arrangement, vocals, collaborations, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why I can collaborate with people from any genre really, in the house music space, and then they can bring their touch, I can bring my touch, and this way we can expand and keep things fresh.
Yeah.
Otherwise, imagine me doing soulful house this whole time. I'd get really bored with it.
Yeah.
I really would. So I'm happy with the fact that I've expanded a bit.
There's something I picked up with Louis Vega a couple of years back. Louis Vega will do one track and he'll have 7 or 8 remixes in one package.
Yeah.
I can't remember who I was discussing this with. And he said there was a discussion about why Louis Vega does that. His Tokyo market doesn't refer to his soulful house as it doesn't sound the same, man. I think I'll need to take you back a bit. The influence of our music was always based on what the DJs that literally played house back then.
Yeah.
They influence what we listen to or what we favor as house, what we call soulful, what we call deep house. Because if you literally were in South Africa, what we call deep house, and you went to Ibiza, for instance, it's not the same.
It's not the same, yes.
It's not the same. So what we call deep house here might sound different from that. So apparently Louis picked up on that. And then when he releases music, that this is a deep house track for Ibiza. This one will work in South Africa. This one's for New York City. This one is for Japan. This one's for this kind of place. Hence why he does that 8-track EP.
Yeah.
Let's call it an 8-track EP and releases that. I found that very fascinating.
Yeah.
Which he does that.
Yeah.
Do you think this new age thing, here's something I hate. Deep house should be deep house across board, right? And it should be whether I like it or not. The South African, I don't think there should be South African deep house.
Okay.
Because there's no England deep house or USA. As soon as it comes from overseas, we call it deep house.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's produced here, then we refer it as South African deep house. That I couldn't get out of my system.
Okay.
Do you think that works though?
Well, I don't know about the semantics or logistics of these kind of things. I'm not so concerned about them.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned about or the classification and stuff. It doesn't concern me. As a composer, I just do music, you know?
Yeah.
So if this DJ is thinking that we shouldn't call this or that, it doesn't really matter so much. I make music. If it sounds good to me, it's good. If it's got a good groove, I like it, it's good. The genre classifications, I don't get bogged down into that kind of thing. For example, when amapiano came out, a lot of deep house producers were against it and still are to this day. Yeah. Oh, amapiano is just, I'm not one of those. I'm saying, I don't care. I'll release even under amapiano as UPZ. I don't care,
Yeah.
As long as for me, it sounds good, I like it, I connect to it. Obviously, I try with UPZ, I keep it kind of house themed. But earlier this year, or last year rather, I had a track with Beanie Man, the dancehall artist.
Yes.
But I decided to put that under UPZ still, even though it was kind of like amapiano, It wasn't really a house thing, but it was close enough for it to be a UPZ track,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not so much into those arguments about what is deep house, what is soulful, what is the names and the classifications.
You're not a purist. Yeah.
No, I'm just a composer and a producer that likes to make music.
If there's people out there that come to you, for instance, and says, produce this type of track for me, have you been doing that kind of work?
Not so much, but sometimes I might get a request maybe for like a remix or something like that. But over time, it's less and less. I'm just more now focused on my own productions, really.
Yeah.
Like I used to do like remixes and stuff like that back in the day. Now I don't really do that anymore. You know.
Yeah.
It's just a question of preference. Just like unless it would be like a big commissioned work for something that close to what I'm doing, and had like say a movie like for some kind of soundtrack. They wanted a song written and they had a certain budget, or it's very similar to other songs that I've done, and I feel that I can do it. Then yeah, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'm just more interested in just writing and composing my own songs.
Yeah.
Myself or in collaboration with others.
Yeah, it's more about you want to produce majority.
Yeah, I'll keep it to I want to. I mean, that what works for me now.
Yeah. Right now, you're doing Pure Surprise version 2.0.
Yeah, I've done it, which is very similar to the original. But you know what? I just wanted to refresh the track. Just get the drums were a little bit new, and just everything in the sound is a bit tightened. So I did that. Yeah, I did that.
And that's coming out on vinyl.
No, that came out already.
No. I mean, this is the package that's going to be part of the vinyl.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do with the vinyl, I want to do a Pure Surprise vinyl this year. It's going to have the original version. It's going to have Pure Surprise 2.0, and it's going to have an amapiano version of Pure Surprise.
Yeah.
But like a private school amapiano version, also very similar to the original, just more as a amapiano production in terms of the drums.
Yeah.
But it's got a lot of the elements of the original. I've also removed. I might, do like a guitar solo instead of the rap or something. But yeah.
Yeah. For you as UPZ, what inner thought, your experience, your skill, how do you give it back to the up and coming dudes? I know you did the Bridges for Music theme where you got to give a masterclass on the students there.
Yeah.
Like, do you see yourself ever doing that kind of work in future where you're educating up and coming artists?
I'm happy to do it. It all depends on if I get invited to do it. If Bridges, or in the past I've done a few workshops in Alex Township in Joburg, and stuff like that. So if I'm invited to it, I'm happy to give back. And talk about my experiences or whatever they want to talk about, music related. And maybe another way of me giving back, I don't know if it's called that, but it's like collaborating with some up and coming artists as well. I kind of like doing that.
Yeah.
And then they can hopefully learn from what I can bring to the table in terms of like my experiences and, things to do with composition, songwriting. I'm happy to learn from them what they bring to the table. I'm always learning,
Yeah.
So they also bring a lot of very interesting things to the table. Like if it's an amapiano producer or deep house producer, or so I'm always happy to learn from them and they learn from me. So I guess that's we're helping each other
grow, basically.
Yeah, learn and grow. And
do you ever worry about the oversaturation in the market of music that tends to overshadow the good stuff in the market? Like, for instance, you're a really experienced guy, and literally whatever you push out literally is musically appealing, and it's something that should be heard and played everywhere. But then in the same breath, you release a track, literally there's like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 tracks going on the same release date as you. Somebody was talking about regulation, and I felt you can't regulate music.
Yeah.
People just have to dig. But what is your take on the oversaturation of music in the market?
I think it is what it is. I think there's also pluses to the fact that anyone or a lot of people can release and whatever. I think let the market decide. It's a free market. Let them decide, not regulation and all that. I don't believe in that. Yeah. Let the market decide. And unfortunately, there's some gatekeepers, right? But also, on the other hand, the market has become more open maybe to what it used to be. Because back then, there was a time before all the Spotify and all that, you were dependent maybe a lot on like compilers and radio stations and stuff like that, or certain specific labels. But I think now it's opened up a little bit, the market. So there's a lot of advantages to the fact that you can, the market is more open. If you're a indie artist or a solo artist, you can get attention if you do something well, you can get the attention either via like TikTok, social media, or just by being good. I think if you're good and you have some skills of getting your track out there and collaborating with people, someone will take attention,
Yeah.
So in some ways, I don't mind so much the oversaturation. I do read about it, like saying this amount of tracks have been are released by Spotify every day. But also myself, I've like found my niche. I have a niche already.
Yeah.
So maybe for me, it's less bothersome. But for someone else, it might be more difficult, which is why for up and coming artists, they must always think about how can they do something a bit different. Or if they do something that is similar to the others, they must do it really well. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The production must be good. The vocals must be good. They must do it really well, or they must do something a little bit different.
Yeah.
And then if they do something well, if it's a good song, someone will pay attention.
Yeah.
If you like push it a little bit here or there, and you need a little bit of some skills in terms of like how the industry works, who to push it to, when to push it, how to push it. You need to know a little bit of those skills as well.
Yeah, true. Who are you feeling in the game,
from a production point of view, I like the 3-step style going around, tucks in and all that.
Yeah.
I really like that. I like some of the like artwork sounds and some of that deep house thing, which sometimes has some of those amapiano elements.
Yes.
Who else? Atmos Black, some of his stuff. You see, since I kind of stopped DJing a few years back.
Yeah.
When I say DJing, meaning I still DJ, but I only do play original music, right? Original Upz music, often accompanied with a percussionist. So since I'm not really watching or following like what's going on every week like I used to, I don't know all the current artists or whatever. I mean, I know, but I don't know like I used to know, because I used to obviously collect as a DJ. I used to collect, go to Traxsource, Beatport, download, buy, blah blah blah. But I do listen to new music, obviously, on like things like New Music Friday, Spotify, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, also Cairo, if I'm saying his name correctly.
Yeah.
Very good. And if there's a good track, it will come to my attention. And often I might even sometimes like do a TikTok about it or something.
Yeah.
If there's a nice track, even though I don't DJ other people's music at the moment, I'm still happy to support if there's a track that I really like.
Yeah.
And on my TikTok is where I'm a little bit less formal, and I'll talk about new releases that I'm feeling.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I think you did your interview with People of Space, shout out Watchman. Was it last year?
Which one? The Everything House Music. Towards the end of 2023, I think it was.
Right. You didn't have TikTok.
No.
If I remember correctly, you did speak about this.
No, I didn't have TikTok. Actually, I recently only got into TikTok. I started it, but I was only posting small video clips. I only started getting vocally active on TikTok, i.e. showing my face and talking, around last July, 6 months ago. And I was pretty active at one point.
Yeah.
I'm not as active as I used to be, but I might be a bit more active down the line.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of things I wanted to talk about, including some of my past experiences, some of my current releases, and my up and coming project. So I had a lot to talk about, and TikTok was a great channel for that.
Do you think it's a better space social media wise?
I think
is it just that everybody's flocking to it currently?
No, I think it's a good, it depends what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you're good and if you enjoy talking to the camera, then I think it's good. I think TikTok is really good with that.
Yeah.
Though I've also seen a lot of people doing really well with TikTok just by posting clips of music,
True.
I found on my channel, even if I post clips of my own songs, it doesn't seem to do as well. Like someone else might post Pure Surprise and it will go viral.
Yeah.
If I post it, Nothing. But if I talk about some of my song, like if I talk about Pure Surprise or the lyrics, or if I talk about, like my new release now, Say, or if I talk about the Upz Slow compilation album, which I released recently, which I talked a lot about on TikTok, then
It does. Good.
yeah, I can do like quite well.
Okay.
It's a lot of hit and miss TikTok, I think.
Yeah. One of the conversations I caught is you were telling people that they are singing Pure Surprise wrong in that one part.
Yeah.
Could you please tell us the official lyrics on that part?
Yeah, I did a TikTok. That TikTok went kind of like semi-viral. But yeah, I was saying they're singing the lyrics wrong. They're saying I, but the correct lyric should be. And then I kept it a tease. I didn't give the answer straight away.
Yeah.
But the correct lyrics is till the morning light. The light is sung light. So actually when they're saying I, it's still correct.
Yeah.
But they're not getting the first and last part. It's light. So it's not exactly incorrectly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cute, I think.
I saw, what South Africans do was when you want to change something that they used to.
Yeah.
They went on TikTok and said, hey, you released the song, but it's ours now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I like that, actually. I like that. And actually, I did a funny video follow-up TikTok where I was saying, you know what? You guys are right. I'm re-registering the song on Samro with the new lyric. Obviously, I was joking, but it was like kind of saying, okay, yeah, I get that.
I should believe Pure Surprise is a classic amongst classics. Would you tell us about the Upz Slow?
Yeah, Upz Slow is a kind of a compilation album which I released a few months back. What I did was, obviously because of the new trend which has been happening for a few years here in South Africa, is a lot of the music is played slower than it actually is released, right?
Yeah.
So, back when we first started, a lot of us released music like at 125 BPM. It was like standard, like Black Coffee, Black Motion, myself. But in today's day, like a lot of these tracks aren't played at that BPM. A lot of played 116, 118. So what I decided to do was, instead of like a listener just listening to these tracks slow down in the club or groove or whatever, let me actually also make it for streaming, so that a person that's listening to these tracks in a slow down version can also enjoy it from home, right? Nice. So I put together, I think it was 18 tracks from my back catalog. All of them were initially between 120 to 125 BPM. And I called it Upz Slow, and I slowed it down to between 113 to 118 BPM.
Okay.
And it's got tracks like, Pure Surprise, Believing, Uzongilinda, Africa Woman with Black Motion, Love Is Not For Hire, the Black Coffee remix, the track with CO, Dream Away, and a few of some lesser known tracks as well, Happy Days with Cuba and Stephanie Cook. But it covers, I think, most of the better known tracks from the Upz back catalog. And I actually like it a lot because when I listen to the Upz slow tracks, I've gotten used to it so much that I can't actually listen as much to the faster versions now. So I really enjoy the slow down version. And for me, it was also a good excuse to kind of like put all these tracks together, speak about them on TikTok or social media, and introduce like a new generation to some of these tracks.
Yeah, it's actually, you're quite right. A lot of South African DJs
literally drop the music down to about that BPM. Amapiano literally is released at 113, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 112 to 114.
112, yeah. That's actually a dope idea.
Yeah.
You didn't get backlash from the community?
No backlash at all. I just got actually positive. I didn't change the actual tracks.
Yeah,
all I
you
did
just slowed it down.
I lowered the BPM, and I also did it in a way which doesn't affect the quality, because I also lowered the pitch at the same time.
Yeah.
So it just sounds nicer actually in a way.
Yeah. There's a question I wanted to ask you earlier on. Have you ever worked with At Jazz, Jimstar, and Charles?
No, I haven't worked with them. Maybe in the future I will. I did meet though At Jazz. We did. I met him in Botswana, and we played in one festival together.
Yeah.
But otherwise, no, I haven't.
You haven't worked with them.
Haven't worked with them.
Any future plans too?
Well, if something comes up, I'm open. I'm open to collaborating, working with both established artists and up and coming ones.
Yeah. We're looking at 2025, and it's still the beginning of the year, basically. What should we expect from Upz this year and for the future, basically?
Okay, so basically this year I'm going to be continuing with the releases. As I told you before, I don't release not even on a monthly basis. I would say maybe this year expect maybe between 6 to 10 single releases. Some of it is new tracks that I'm currently working on. Some of it is tracks from the back catalog that I'm reworking. And some of it is going to be under the finite name, where I'm going to be doing Afrofusion.
Yeah.
And I guess every, 4 to 6 months or so, I might also release a compilation of, tracks that I released in the past. Like even now, literally 2 days ago, I released a compilation called Afro Sessions Volume 2.
Yeah.
And it's basically, I just compiled different Afro House tracks that were released on Solid Records, put it on a compilation, and I'm going to be talking about it in the coming weeks on social media. So yeah, I basically am going to be releasing some singles. I'm going to be releasing some compilations, and maybe some of those singles I'll put together and release it also under an EP or even an album,
Yeah.
And in terms of live shows, I'll continue doing my UPZ live concert, where I play basically I do like basically a 1 hour show where I play only original UPZ music.
Yeah.
Either bootlegs or remixes that I've done, or original music that I've produced, or sometimes remixes of UPZ songs. So that's my concept, and oftentimes I do it with a percussion player. So I'm calling it kind of like UPZ live.
Yeah.
And there will be some UPZ live shows, I'm assuming in Cape Town, Joburg, and possibly overseas as well during 2025.
Yeah.
So that is the main plan for 2025. Beyond that, let's wait and see.
Yeah, watch the space.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for actually giving us your time and being part of the show. I'm definitely sure I've learned a lot today about some of the things that I didn't know about you. The music that you literally have done, and the work that you have done. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
Pure surprises till today. And we'll be looking out for more of your stuff that's still coming out in the future.
Yeah.
And literally, I can't wait for your release on vinyl. And definitely I'd like a sit down once that's out.
All right.
So as then you can take us through the process of literally how the costing and the making for some of the independent labels that really want to get into that.
Okay, yeah. Would be happy to do that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for coming through to the interview.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Your socials for people to follow?
Socials, most of it is UPZ Sounds, one word. I think Facebook is UPZ Sounds 1, but otherwise Instagram, UPZ Sounds, Twitter or X, UPZ Sounds, TikTok, UPZ Sounds. TikTok is where I'm kind of more like giving a personal approach and talking about myself and some other music projects out there, or anything which I find interesting. Instagram is a bit more curated, let's call it. But would be happy if you follow me, and got stuck with words there. edit that one out.
But I think we do understand what you mean. That you'll find the links to buy the music there. You'll find the links to book the man there. You'll find the links for everything, basically. We get what you mean. We get what you mean. Ladies and gentlemen, this is DJ Ndo-C, leaving you with kind love and peace. Thank you very much, UPZ.
Thanks. Come show your face.
Yeah. Me?
Yes? Edit it out and say.